Please be seated. All our three readings are about struggle. For Prophet Ezekiel, it is the challenge to bring across God's message when he is sent to a rebellious nation. For St. Paul, it is a personal struggle with some recurring, serious, personal faults. For Jesus, it is the struggle for having been recognized as the Messiah in a familiar environment, when the obstacle is indifference. Let us see Jesus' struggle first, and the underlying question which is asked, which is raised to all of us in view of our children. So let us see Jesus' struggle first briefly, its biblical meaning. Jesus left Capernaum and the neighboring sea and comes to the town where he was brought up. And many, as they were hearing, began to be dumbfounded in saying, "Where did this man got these things from? What wisdom is given to this man?" He began to teach. He began to teach intimates that something followed that teaching. And we know from Luke's Gospel, which gives an account of the same event, that the rulers of the synagogue permitted him to address the people. There he applied a passage from Isaiah to his life and showed how the ancient prophecy was now being fulfilled through his ministry. People were first pleased, but when Jesus warned them against unbelief, the sentiment turned against him. It is this hostility on which today's gospel dwells. As they were listening to Jesus, many began to be dumbfounded. The verb is strong, meaning that these people got mentally upset, and in the end they became so angry that they cast Jesus out of the town and wanted to kill him. What happened? They cannot accept the contrast between the ordinary man whom they know so well and the utterly astonishing things which seem utterly beyond him. Their next question is the key. And what wisdom given to this man? And what the wisdom given to this man? And such works of power occurring through his hand. And this is really important and interesting, that they cannot bring themselves to think that Jesus acquired this knowledge of God and this power by himself, that is coming from him. So their thinking should really astound us. They think that somebody must have given it to him, and he's only saying what someone else told him. And they are underlying, they would be interested in that person, not in Jesus. They are totally ignoring him. And the wording of the gospel informs us that it never occurs to them that this knowledge is from God. The same with the miracles. They think that Jesus drew the miracles, the power from some source. These people recognize that something extraordinary happens through Jesus. Yet they become hostile because they cannot solve the mystery as to how their townsmen obtain these gifts. And this is really gets even more interesting, because the same happens in today's world. When there is indifference in people, when there is unbelief in people, when the truth occurs to them, they become angry and refuse it. When God occurs in their lives through someone's witness, they don't respond with openness, but they start mocking the messenger and refuse God in the end. And what is really astounding is that usually Jesus, who marveled the faith of people who believed in him for doing these miracles, in an ironic way, Jesus marveled at their unbelief. Just imagine him being genuinely surprised that, wow, it's really astonishing, quite an achievement that the Messiah is here in front of them and they don't believe in God. Just imagine our Lord, how he marveled at the unbelief of people in today's world. How unbelievable it is that people no longer give thanks for the many gifts in their lives, that they wake up every morning, that they enjoy health, particularly when they are young. So just imagine our Lord being genuinely amazed at the unbelief of our townsmen. In the Gospel, they speak of this man. Their conception of Jesus is that he is a man just like themselves. His father is a carpenter, one who makes utensils, furniture, and house fittings. Jesus is the same. So they were trapped. The contrast of his familiar surroundings and the Messiah's work is so great. As Luke informs us, the people rose up, thrust Jesus out of the city, and tried to kill him. So let us turn now to the underlying question. How can it happen? How did it happen to those people at the time? Because at one level it became obvious that the quality of faith was very poor at the time of Jesus. Faith in the covenant must have been corrupted. Knowledge of God, genuine prayer life must have deteriorated, that they couldn't see the Messiah among them, at least at that part of the country. It's a bit like, or very much like today. People have precious little knowledge of God. People know precious little about how they were saved. People know hardly anything about the Ten Commandments or the teaching of the Church. So no wonder that the attitude of grown-up adults is indifference at best, hostility towards religion and Christians at worst. And what is intriguing, how this indifference affects their children, how this indifference affects children in today's world. And this is the underlying question. And I wonder what your answer would be to this question. What has disappeared from people's life? What happened to their imagination with the desire to live a life with Jesus? What happened? I cannot give an answer, just I would like to indicate a direction which today's readings insinuate. We can sum up our 3 readings in this light as our own struggle to live as children of God, because faith has to do with being children of God. Growing as children of a loving Father. And I'd like to highlight the word children, child, children, because the underlying quest is about childhood, the ability to grow as a child, to retain the beautiful gift of childhood of imagination, curiosity, playfulness, generosity, to play with God, to think with God, to live with God. So my question is as follows. What is it that made Jesus' townsmen unable to see? How did it affect this mentality? How did it affect their children who were raised up in that indifference? Does it have something to do with the precious time of childhood? That's why I've chosen our illustration from Orion School, which school is about the celebration of childhood and nourishment of childhood. There are people in our congregation who run nurseries, sustaining that playful, happy childhood, and parents who have children. So, does it have to do something with the life our children live in today's world? Do we, as children of God, have a precious gift, a desire, an imagination which grounds our adult faith? Do our children and children in this town have that privileged experiment of being loved, having a genuine childhood which grounds openness and a faith response to God? Because a lot seems to be dependent on that. Does faith has to do with how our children are brought up, how they see the world differently from adults? Not as adults, but as children in their own right. Is there a difference between what children process in terms of information from this world? Is it different from adults see on their screens and in the world, on the internet? Let us think about what it means to create this special space for our children, to have their genuine childhood, which alone perhaps can ground an adult faith which is interested in God. An adult faith which is interested in God. An adult who is interested in God. And this is my working hypothesis, prompted by today's gospel, with the disappearance of childhood, with the disappearance of being children of God, as the time for growth and playfulness, our townsman's reaction would not differ too much what we saw in today's Gospel.